Is totally a beautiful session lined up today, viewers. And I welcome you to an element of Sonali's Cubo. And I'm here with Jayanti Pugalia, welcoming you to today's special, a session, a very candid conversation with a man who is self-made, who is self-worth, and who has created a niche for himself, in the entrepreneurial work. And as we begin more towards into the conversation, I would be speaking more about Mr. Abhishek Rungta. But yes, firstly, a very, very warm welcome to you, Abhishek ji.
Thank you so much, Jayanti.
It's an honor to have you. And yes, I would like to begin today's conversation by telling my dear viewers that, technology is a very unseen element. And it has ingrained our life in such a way that it has fixated many of our problems, especially in the COVID times that we are in right now. It has identified those crucial elements in our life and has taken, a very sole purpose to eradicate from our lives. And I think technology, when combined with entrepreneurship, has a very different ball game altogether. And without these exceptional entrepreneurs like Abhishek Rungta himself sitting with me across the screen, or from Bill Gates to Steve Jobs to Larry Ellison or the Jeff Bezos, we have so many entrepreneurs who've done commendable work to make our life easy. And today we are going to be in this very extensive discussion about how the times have united these collaborations, how entrepreneurial mindset has changed due to the COVID times that we are in now, and how organizations are working together to bring about a very constant and a positive change. And for that, to talk about on the topic, which is the moving beyond the COVID-19, and what will innovation and enterprise look post COVID-19. I have with me Mr. Abhishek Rungta, who is the CEO and founder of IndusNet Technologies. And as very full of pride, the way his team says that he is a self-made man. So Abhishek ji, I would want you to take us, on this journey as to how you did make your company into an award-winning full stack digital service enterprise. And you took it from like a one-man show to an 800 plus member family. So before we start and go into the today's main detail about how enterprises and how the future of entrepreneurship is going to change post the times, would you like to take us on a short journey about yourself as to how your thought processes sync together, and you came about being an entrepreneur who is like an inspiration to today's coming up generation?
Sure, Jayanti. I'd like to touch upon this briefly, but then I would like to focus more time on the topic for the day.
Sure. So I don't want to talk much about yourself, but I am not letting you go away with it, because that's a very important part of today's discussion also.
I kind of started around 22 years back. And as anyone who knows anything about technology business, you will understand that technology business never remains the same over a period of time. So the company that I have built has metamorphed itself 3 to 4 times in last 22 years. So I see that every cycle of a technology business is generally 5 to 6 years at most. And the company has to reinvent itself in that duration. And any company who is not able to reinvent itself in that duration or ride a new wave that is coming up, they do not survive the game. And this is a very, very, I would say, a difficult industry in that way. And it's a merciless industry, because if you are not able to adapt, you won't survive. And adaptation is all about rising trends and also about solving the real problem of the people. Right? You can continue to be in the game, at times if you are funded and if you are just burning money. But if you really want to be in the game where your customers are the only ones who can actually keep you in the game. And that has been the mantra for IndusNet from the very beginning. We have always been a customer funded company. Customers have given each and every penny of the business that we have today, and which we have reinvested in the company, and we have kept growing. And the idea has been very simple. It's a bootstrapped company. So the idea is very simple, that until unless you create value, nobody is going to give you anything. right? So you keep creating value and you get a portion of that back from your customer, right? And then you reinvest that money into building the company further, and then you again create more value for your more customers, and then you reinvest the balance into the company. So it's a very simple formula. It might sound too simple to be true, but that's it, right? Again, there are ways by which you can actually grow and build companies much faster. Frankly speaking, I had no clue of that, and I have learned few of them over a period of time, while I built my company, and I that has been my learning in recent years. But majorly, the company has been built purely on hard work, purely on building a good team, giving the right culture to the team, that customer is the king, which again may sound very cliche, but that is exactly how we have done. And find the right product market fit in the industry, the right problem, the right price, the right audience, and the right solution. If all these things align, business starts happening, and then you don't have to push it very hard. So I think it's all about the momentum. So you have to get to the point of momentum by creating the right combination of these things. And once you have hit that, then the company grows. At that point of time, I think what you need to do is basically look at governance, look at overall management, look at people management, making sure people are doing what they're supposed to do, make sure that the company sticks on its core values and does not deviate. I will not say that we have always been able to do that, because as a business, if a company says that we have always delivered great value for customers, if we have always been very true to our values, frankly speaking, they are lying. Because as the company grows, you will come across challenges, you will come across problems, and at that point of time, you have to take note of it, right? So things will deviate. It's not a straight line. Things will go haywire. The whole challenge is to basically how you bring it back on the track. And if you cannot bring it back on the track, if you cannot ride the next wave, if you cannot reinvent yourself in every 6 years, if you cannot, read the pulse of your customers, and if you cannot really match a lot of things at the right time, business won't survive. So I think at IndusNet, I believe that we have been able to do that consistently well. We have failed more times than we have succeeded, but possibly we have succeeded at the time when it mattered the most. And I think we are at another very interesting juncture where we have to again reinvent, and we are all putting our best, best foot forward. We are working hard. We are figuring out that what the new world will look like, and we are pretty confident that we should also be able to come out successful from this.
So over here, Abhishek, if I have to ask you that in two facets of my question. A, if I have to ask you pre-COVID and post-COVID, just to understand and maybe give a better insight to people probably who are near about in the same technology as you are, or who are aspiring to be. If I ask you pre-COVID and now that the times we are in, what are the kinds of dimensional changes that you have incorporated in terms of, reaching out for your customers or keeping intact your customer base, or in terms of your working? Because there's a shuffle, and each day it's like you get used to a shuffle, then again there are teething issues, and again you shuffle. But if I have to just ask you, A, how are you, or how did you perceive this, and if you could tell us in a little detail, from to what are the different stages that you evolved.
So in our business, you see there are three important things, right? One is getting the right customer. Second is getting the right people, and third is getting the right process, right? As long as you have done a job which can be classified as 75% good in all the three sectors, I think you will do great, right? However, if you fail in any one of the dimensions, right, the company will start struggling and start facing problems. So I will touch upon all the three dimensions a little bit, just for understanding. So when I say get the right customers, this means that get the customers who will stick to you, right? Who are not coming to you only for your price, who have got a long-term strategic intent to stick to you and work with you, right? So until and unless your customer and you have a strategic partnership, when I say strategic, this means that you are both essential for each other's overall, meeting of objectives, meeting of goals, right? The relationship may break at the slightest of the strain.
True.
Right?
True.
Things go, up and down, right? And you have to maintain your customers because they are your revenue channel. So earlier, when I started off IndusNet, I was very, very open in taking anyone and everyone who would come with a check as a customer, right? We have done, and figured out eventually that that's never the right thing to do. Right? You need to choose your customers. You need to make sure that you are working with the right person. There is a cultural match. Right? Earlier, when I used to hear these things, I used to feel that these are just the big talks, and these are things that companies say because they want to say that. Right? They just want to show that they are doing the right thing. But
Right.
once you burn your hands, once you realize that this is so critical that you only invest time in the right customers when you are building a company.
Right.
It has sunk in, and we are very specific that we only choose customers where we can actually add great value. Number one. Number two is that we are critical to their business. If we are not critical to someone's business, we don't want to do business with them.
Yes.
And number three is that whom we can serve well and we want to serve well. Because again, there is another thing which is a human aspect, right? Is this person respecting you sufficiently or not? Right? We are not saying that someone should be praising us all the time, but there should be a basic mutual respect between
True.
our customer and us, right? So is that there or not? And last but not the least, is the customer having a decent future or not? Because you put a lot of effort, So in a service business like ours, you put a lot of effort to win a client's trust. And there's a lot of upfront work where you do not make any money for the first 5-6 months, at times even a year.
True.
Right? If you're not having a customer who has got a bright future, right?
True.
You will keep digging the well and you will keep, drinking water from that, and it's never going to end. So that never becomes a good business. So that is the combination of getting the right customer.
True.
Second, I the right team, right? So the right team again is someone who is ready to adapt to your value system.
True.
I have made the mistake where I kept hiring at one point of time, and I had a lot of people who came in where I was not defining the values, and they defined the value of the company. And I think
And I'm including you here, Abhishek ji, but that is a usual mindset where the company is just given to the customers.
yeah, again, given to the employees also, right? So a lot of people come, they bring their own value system inside the company, and
Right.
they build their own value system inside the business. Because if the boss is not dictating, if the company's founder is not dictating what the value of the company is all about, then people come to the company from various field, various thought process, various experiences in the world. They start defining the value, and a lot of times those values can be detrimental to the business. And more than detrimental, the challenge is that as an entrepreneur, right, you create something because you want to associate yourself with that thinking process, with that creation.
Yeah.
And when that creation totally deviates from your value system, then you start hating to be inside that organization. Even as a founder, you don't like to be inside that organization.
True.
So again, I have also seen that situation, and we have been able to pull out the company to our own value system, where we kind of fix that part. And it's very painful. It's much more painful than pulling out a company from a loss-making entity, right? If your value system has been corrupted, it's much more painful, it's much more difficult, it's much more time taking to fix that company. So we also fixed our company from those situations. So that has made us strong only. Last but not the least is the process. Right? A lot of times we put, we think that the process is just basically a set of activity that you do, but it's also the set of control mechanism that you put in the company. Right? How are you measuring efficiency? How are you measuring what is important to the company? Right? And how are you continually working on it to kind of fix it? Right? So you need to have a very nice team who understands business. Right?
Yeah.
So it is a very interesting thing is that we made everything very transparent across the company. So even my programmer knows what is the value of the project he's working upon.
Okay.
Right? He even knows if the project is in profit or loss. Right? Everybody has to know everything, because if you want to make everyone accountable in the company for certain numbers, right, you have to at least disclose the number to them. Right? If you don't disclose the number, if you just keep it to yourself, then you are the only guardian and you are the only custodian of that number and that result in the company. So the moment you open it up, I think you can get a lot of people from inside the company who is ready to take ownership and ready to work for the organization at a different level.
Right.
Yes, they who will take advantage.
Yes, I was coming to that, that being so transparent, I'm sure it creates a lot of, issues as well.
For example, in our company, each and every employee knows what was our sales number last month, what is our pipeline, what has been our revenue, and is our revenue falling or growing. Everybody knows everything. In fact, just 2 days back, we did a town hall online with all the people inside that room, and we disclosed all the numbers. Right? We even disclosed that what was our employee number 3 months back, 2 months back, today. If it's falling or if we have to remove someone, let it be transparent, let it be known to people. Let people ask questions. There should not be any reason why people should not ask questions. Right? I think that would be a very bad leadership where you do not let people ask questions and you do not answer anything. So that has been very fundamental to the company. At times, I have found, and my leadership team has found it to be very difficult to do this. But
Right.
once you get into this habit, I think it's very relieving, right? You kind of feel great about it that you don't have to really worry about hiding anything, and the team will start to self-adjust. And if someone has to take benefit, he will take some benefit. But eventually, there are a lot of people who will actually benefit the company.
True.
These are the three, I would say, the cornerstones of building business for us.
That is very wisely said. But I have this question when you just talked about choosing your customers wisely. So, if here is a firm, Abhishek Ji, who is bootstrapped or, or with the loan, with funded, and here you want to create and generate numbers, you want to generate monetarily numbers. And if you are choosy with the kind of customer base, and initially, as most of the entrepreneurs would want to just have conversions, how do you just have that mindset that this is my value system and I'm going to take this person and take not this person? Don't you think it's a clash between your conversions and your value? And if there is a clash, then what do you advise? An entrepreneur goes after values or goes after the conversions?
Again, you have to always go after your values at the end of the day. I'll give you a reason. So around 6 years back, when it was around general election time in India, we were approached by an agency to take up the entire campaign, online campaign of a political party. The deal value was more than our entire year's turnover. That could have doubled the turnover of the company in just few months.
Right.
By that time, we made a very clear statement inside the organization, and we took a stance that we will not work for political parties. We will work for the government, but we will not work for political parties.
True.
And we did not take that work.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's very, very important that you stick to those things, right? You may have made a mistake at one point of time or other, but once you have learned from that mistake, you make a value, you make it a part of your value, if you don't want to repeat that mistake, and then you stick to it, right? And we stuck to it and we are happy, because if you take that kind of a contract, right, you have to continuously lie and you have to continuously slander people online.
Mm-hmm.
And what kind of an organization you are building at that point of time?
Mm-hmm.
You are actually spoiling the entire organization, the entire culture of the company, and you also become a person who is standing for lies and misinformation.
Mm-hmm.
So that is what we were very, very clear about, and we did not take that contract. In fact, recently I started a company with a friend of mine, and it's a startup, not externally funded, right? And here also we collectively took a call that we will pick deals that is right for the company, and not just any and every deal. And I can proudly say that it was driven more by my partner than me. That we will only pick deals which is right for the company and not just any and every deal.
So just to add to that, Abhishek ji, maybe when you entered the market, when you entered as an entrepreneur, bootstrapped, having your values into your cart and moving along, do you think you would rate the competition level that is there now comparatively higher than the time that you entered, which made it easier for you to run a value-aided company rather than, conversions, and it is more difficult for the entrepreneurs now? A, they might not be bootstrapped. B, they might be externally funded. C, they have competition and they have to live up to it. So if I have to just get your view on that, please.
I get your point. See, again, I think it's always difficult to build a business at any point of time. You cannot compare two businesses at two different point of times, right? I can always say that if I would have started my business 40 years back when Infosys started, I would have succeeded much more, because at that time competition was even less. I could have easily walked into a Fortune 500 company and backed the contract. Today, to get into a Fortune 500 company, it's a nightmare. It's not easy job, right? To convince them to move their loyalty from their existing vendor to us, or to move from an organization like IBM, or to move from an organization like Accenture to IndusNet. It's very difficult. So challenges are at all the point of time, right? Newer companies have newer technology to start with. Newer companies have got new products to build, right? We have to always take care of our legacy. Again, similarly, Infosys and companies like them, they also have their own challenges today, right? We all try to underestimate the challenge of a company depending upon our perception of the time.
True.
But second is that, again, I think value system, a lot of time people say that it gets built from day one. I'm sorry, it doesn't build from day one. It builds based on your experience over a period of time.
Very right, yeah.
A lot of guys who start a company, on the first day, they declare a value statement, which is great because they have gained experience and then they have started a company.
Mm-hmm.
When I started my company, I had no experience. So I had no value system defined in my company. It all got built over a period of time when you realize what is right and what is wrong. What do you stand for, what you don't stand for, what you feel is right and what you feel is wrong. So it gets built over time. And I seriously feel that those guys who have a value system to start with their company, because they have got past experience and they have got capability to think deeply, I think hats off to them, because they will do much better, much faster. If you have a strong value system, you will also attract companies which have similar value systems. Therefore, your sales process actually becomes easier. It's not difficult. Yes. So if you think that paying vendors on time is a good thing, right? You will not be able to work with a company which thinks paying vendor on time is a bad thing.
True.
Right. So the two companies who think alike, they start working together very quickly.
True.
So you always attract those companies who think like you.
True.
And
That is very rightly said. Tough, but I think in the long run, it's companies like this who sustain what we are actually living now, which is the changes. So if I have to ask you, Abhishek Ji, coming back to today's core topic, which is seeing how enterprises and seeing how organizations are, going to be breeding from now onwards, what is that change that you observed around you? Like we've talked about you, but as a conscious entrepreneur, what are the changes you observed with companies around you? Do you think you were impacted with anything? If you don't want to name the company, it's okay, but anything in positive that impacted you, which was like a very, very positive change or a policy which these companies adapted due to the change in times?
Because I think you keep learning, and I have no shame in accepting where I learn from. Right, so I keep learning from my peers, my competitors, the big companies, the small companies which start the last day, even my partners. I keep learning from everyone. So I have no shame in saying that we evolve, right? So there has been a lot of interesting learning over this whole COVID period. The one biggest learning was that as someone has very famously said that there are weeks then nothing, there are years then nothing happens, and then there are weeks in which the years happen. Right?
True.
I think that has become a very popular quote in recent times, and which is very true. So, for example, we always wanted to run a company which works from home so that we can give flexibility to people. Our biggest challenge as a business is to get access to the right talent. Right? And we always used to crib that being in Calcutta, we don't get the right talent. Because the right talent find it as a catch-22 in Calcutta, because they don't think that there is another good company after IndusNet. So they don't want to shift to Calcutta just for one company. Right. And again, it's very difficult to build a company without the right talent. But once an online company where our entire talent base is online, right? It doesn't matter, where employees are, where my team is, and I can company very, very rapidly in any part of the world, right? We aim to and we wish to. I'm not saying that we will. We aim to and we wish to remain at least 80% virtual company, even after the lockdown gets over, even after the world gets to the normal time.
Right.
That the power of this is huge, right? Think about it. Let's say I am talking to you. If I really need to bring someone from my team to share some statistics in this meeting, in this call, I can bring that person and I can add value to this meeting.
True.
In the real world, where we are all physically sitting, right? We are not using the technology to its full extent.
True.
We are actually just becoming we are just trying to use technology a little bit and feeling that we are technologists or we are technocrats, which we are not. So this is like real digitalization will actually kick in now. And it is also a great opportunity for a business like us. But I think more than opportunity, I think it's an opportunity to transition the business into a more virtual, into a more agile company. And that is what we are looking at doing. And when you are in office all the time, you feel that you are in extremely high level of control.
Right.
Which you are not actually. Okay? The moment you start coming out from your office and start working from home, you start realizing that you are actually not in control. Right? Because then you start hunting for what's happening and you start throwing your, weight here and there to see what's happening. You keep asking questions, you keep intruding into other people's space. And they then start thinking, okay, my boss never used to ask me all this when the office was on. Now suddenly he's asking me all that. So it's not his fault. It's that we have not created the process to get that data on our table on a regular basis in a regular format. And then look into the data to understand how the company is moving. So we are a very, very organized company in terms of data processes. But we still found that there was a huge, huge gap. The moment we went to work from home, all those gaps came out, staring at us. And when it came out staring at us, we figured out that, okay, these are our massive gaps. If we can fix these gaps, as an organization will become far more efficient, and far more agile.
So do you think that this digital platform that we are on now, which we happen to be on now, is yielding better productivity?
Oh yes, any day, much better productivity. In fact, so what we are able to do right now, think about it, we are able to share the same file on a laptop, keep
Right.
someone, and keep making changes in a file, and keep collaboratively developing a piece of article, or keep collaboratively creating a piece of marketing collab,
Mhm.
right? Even when we're in office, right, sitting next to each other or sitting in the room next to each other, we
Mhm.
never did that ever.
True.
Here we are able to do that, and we are enjoying doing that, and it's not taking any time, right? We are just spending that half an hour meeting,
Mhm.
doing that, and coming out of it very, very quickly.
Mhm.
Nobody is spending time in walking from even his desk to a particular meeting room. Nobody is waiting for anyone. The meeting has started. If a guy wants to join, he joins.
Right.
So it
Right.
is far better than what we used to have.
So if I have to ask you, in terms of the companies per se, which is around us, what are the kind of attributes or focused leadership is required, in times now that we are in? And secondly, if I have to ask you, where do you see these focused projects or the changes are going to be leading us tomorrow? I do understand you've spoken a bit about that, but if I have to ask you give us in points a few of the attributes, which is like general attributes, which is required for organizations and companies belonging to different diaphragm of work. How would you pin them?
So I think the number one attribute that companies and leaders need today is focus. Right? Gone are the days when you can do too many things and you are just dabbling in many things and you are still surviving. I don't think companies who will have that attitude will survive. You have to have focused leadership. A leader with one single broad goal and working on that very, very strongly. Right? And then he should have the ability to align the entire organization towards that goal. If he's not able to do that, then the organization will fall apart. That's number one. Number two, I think, is that ability to basically motivate people, right? And get the right people on board. Right? The recruitment strategies and everything will change. At the end of the day, a company is defined by the kind of people you get on board.
Right.
Right? This recruiting in the COVID era and the post-COVID era will be very different from what it was earlier. Third is, I think you need to have a very clear, I would say a vision, right? You should be able to predict the future to a great extent. You should be able to sense the future because now things are going to change very rapidly,
True.
right? And you have to have the ability to think critically. You cannot just run the show the way you have been running or the way the world has been running and you think that just being part of it, you will be able to successfully build a business. I think that era is coming to a close now.
Mhm.
So I think you will need to kind of get uh, out of your comfort zone. You have
Right.
to see that, okay, how can I make a change? How can I make a difference? So people have to really get their foothold really into marketing. Earlier, marketing was basically about publicizing their product, but
Yeah.
marketing is much more than that. Marketing is understanding the sentiment of the consumer, understanding how you can differentiate, how you can create a product to solve that problem, and how you can stand out.
True.
You know, and you can be really what the customer need from you. Maybe you cannot serve the
It's like building the trust virtually, which is much more difficult now, but it's easier. So,
advertising. Today you have to sell by trust, absolutely, as you rightly said, and you have to sell by word of mouth. Right?
right.
In today's world, how would you sell by advertising, pure advertising? So companies who are purely dependent on advertising, which still a lot of companies are, right? A
Right.
lot of companies are dependent on luck.
Right.
Trust. I find companies are purely dependent on luck. कि चलो ये काम शुरू करते हैं, बिक तो जाएगा ही.
Right.
It doesn't work anymore, right? You have to learn how to create word of mouth. You have to learn how to create differentiator and points of discussion around your product so that people talk about your product.
True.
Until it happens, you stand nowhere.
And how different, Abhishek ji, this, I know it's totally different, but how does one, there's so many portals now and so many organizations who are coming up, with these mandates and talks and webinars, guiding people about merchandising and the sales and the customer reach and understanding. As you said, it's beyond advertising now. It's like actually gaining your customer base and trust virtually online and making those conversions online, which is going to be an era that we're looking out for. So would you want to talk something about that and tell the viewers uh, how can they pick up these tactics and where to look them up? Are you planning to like come up with a webinar and guide people on it? Because it's like you just don't know where to look into this.
So, I mean, I think that, the more you read about the subject and the more you learn, I think your thought process boils down to a few fundamental principles in that subject.
True.
And that has happened with me. I do not know if it's a good or bad thing,
Right.
but that has happened with me. And that's why you won't find me speaking on marketing or digital marketing and subjects like that anymore.
Right.
Because there are only some fundamental principles, right? There is nothing more to marketing. There are some principles, and as long as you can stick to those fundamental principles, right, you can do great marketing, right? And you cannot really be taught about that. You have to observe and absorb that. It takes time, and I think once you get to that point, you don't feel like really talking about various things, and you then realize that there is so much to learn that preaching is kind of is a bad use of your time.
That's very rightly said. And Abhishek ji, if the main question, which is like innovation, totally a ball game, which is like going to be different, and as a demand, so the innovation. Where do you see the innovation is heading post the COVID, or the ideologies, the mindsets, which are going to be initiating innovations which we've never seen before? So, what do you have to say about that?
Innovation again is a cliche subject. Innovation is obviously doing something new or doing something in a new way so that it creates new values, right? You unlock new values in the market. And innovation happens when you see problems, right? If everything is hunky-dory and great, you don't need to change anything. You don't need to improve something. You don't need to make something better than what it was yesterday. You don't need to find a new way of doing things, right? The old way of doing things is perfectly okay. So innovation starts happening the moment people start observing problems, right? And when you are surrounded with problems all around, right, a lot of innovation is bound to happen. So I feel this is a great, I would say, a ripe breeding ground of innovation. The current scenario is a right breeding ground of innovation. A lot of innovation will happen. If you also historically see, again, it's no rocket science. If you historically see, most of the most amazing companies were built during recessions. When things were tough, they saw the problems which people are facing, right? And good companies are always created when they see a problem that someone is facing and they try to solve that problem. They are not created because someone wants to make some extra money or someone just want to be cool and someone wants to be featured in publication A or publication B, or someone want to be interviewed by you or someone else, right? So no company gets formed for those reasons. And if a company is getting formed for those glamorous reasons, they don't survive. So companies, any and every company which has done well must have innovated somewhere, right? They must have done something different. Otherwise, why will people do business with them? And I feel the companies which are trying to establish themselves at this time, if they're successful in doing so, and I wish and I hope that most of the companies will be able to do that, because entrepreneurs are very resilient people in general. They would have innovated. And I think you will have lots of innovation stories, some innovation stories that will change the world, that will make those companies billion-dollar companies. Some innovations which will be small ones, which will just make them survive.
Right.
Some will be good enough to make them millionaires. Because at the end of the day, you make what the value you create for others at the end of the day. Right? So
yes, because I have been very closely observing few startups and few companies, like a few products. Like if you read the other day that Parle G has done the biggest business that it is not done in the past 80 years, and that was shocking. Or a few small startups who are able to generate more business in the times that they are now, because they have converted their entire plan to e-commerce, and the reach is much more distinctively accessible now. So yes, I do agree with you. And if you're talking about small businesses, I'm also going to be wanting to talk about your very eminent role, because you do work as a mentor with startups, as an angel investor, being the president of TiE Kolkata now. where do you see startups? So do you see a mindset, again, an innovation change, into what the focus of the ideology is going to be? Because as you and me understand, the demand is going to be totally different. Secondly, where would they initiate? Do you think there would be companies now who would be able to get external funding because of the times which are so unprecedented, which we cannot actually evaluate as to how long this is going to be pulling? So yes, I would want to have an intake on that, because the youth, are totally because I am being a mother of a teenager, 19-year-old, a boy. I'm always worried about this, and there's so many of my, known friends who are always asking me as to what is the time going to be for youth now?
You see, startups are the flag bearers of innovation for sure, right? There is no question about it. However, every startup is not very innovative, right? There are lots of
Right.
Me Too. There are lots of startups which only survive because they have received some funding and they are burning cash, right? In my understanding, any startup which has been started with the sole aim of raising funds,
Right.
wrong business, right? A startup has to understand and learn that they have to survive on their own merit and as a bootstrapped mode for some time. If a startup cannot survive bootstrapped for some time, I don't think that business makes any sense and there is any commitment from the entrepreneur to the business.
True.
So if you want to get paid a salary from day one, if you want to be able to do everything that money can do on day one, and you are not really creating anything from scratch, right? I don't see that is really creation of any value, right? So I think good startups will not only survive, but they will thrive and they will do great. Because if you learn how to build a business and sustain a business during time where forcefully you cannot generate funding, you will always do good. And when investors are pulling off their hand, and they will obviously only invest in companies which are good and which is fundamentally strong.
Hmm.
So this is a great time to see strong companies evolve and come into existence. So in my opinion, this is I would say is a blessing in disguise. This whole scenario that is going on is a blessing in disguise for new companies, new innovations, the companies of the future to create a strong foothold, to make a mark for themselves and to grow.
Yes, very wisely said, Abhishek ji. And while I was thinking over the questions to ask you, a very beautiful term came into my mind while reading about you, and the details your team forwarded to me was the word open innovation. So, according to you, what is open innovation? And how far is it going to be acceptable in the market coming? And secondly, I have to ask you about collaborations, because I see from my end that positive collaborations, even if they are not if there are these collaborations in thoughts, or in a common product, or giving each other visibility, which is going to be monetizing much later, when times are better. So I want to ask you, according to you, how far and how feasible and how sustainable the open innovation is going to be? And secondly, what is your take on collaborations?
Sure. So let me first talk about open innovation, and I think that will also lead uh, you to the point on collaboration. Right? So open innovation is a need of the hour in many companies, especially those companies. Uh, in fact, every company, I'll tell you what, because every company today, to stay and sustain in this game, they have to innovate, right? Because every company goes up and then they start plateauing and then they start coming down, right? If they want to survive in the game, then they have to start another product line or another innovative line which actually takes them up and kind of covers them before they start declining. And this is a continuous process. This is not rocket science. This is no management gyan. This is a very normal knowledge that everybody has who runs a business. There is no product or there is no offering which always stays, right? You have to continuously create new offering, new product. You have to bring new innovation on the ground to run it, right? The challenge is as the company becomes successful and as the company grows, right, the ability of the company to innovate gets diminished by a great extent. I'm not talking about every company. Many companies continue to be innovative throughout their life cycle and they do great, right? They are the companies that we talk about every day nowadays. For example, they have been innovative throughout, right?
Mhm.
But a lot of companies start struggling for new innovation, right? And at that point of time, they need to acquire companies or they need to acquire innovation. So open innovation is a very nice way to acquire innovation, right? You open up your company, you open up your challenges, and you ask people to come and innovate for you, right? And then you either onboard them at senior position to run that division, or you acquire that innovation that they have done for you, or you kind of figure out and you pay them for that innovation that they have done for you. Right? So if you cannot do innovation entirely internally, then you obviously open up your company and your challenges and your problems and your market to other people who can come and work with you to do innovation. That's open innovation. And if you see, the fundamental nature of open innovation is collaboration. Right. If you are open to collaboration, if you feel that you can do everything by your own, you don't need to do open innovation, and you will not be able to really, speed ahead in this game, right? Even companies who are having a strong R&D division, even companies who are doing great innovation, they continuously do open innovation, right? And they have their own acceleration centers, they have their own incubation centers. They actually talk to new founders, they talk to innovative individuals. They do acqui-hires, they hire right people. They do a lot of different things to continually stay on the edge. So open innovation again also takes away the need of creating an innovation budget. I see lots of large companies, not only in India but globally, has a very interesting concept of creating an innovation budget, right? Mm-hmm. They will take 10 million, 20 million, 50 million and spend on 2 or 3 major innovations, which is a useless model, right? You cannot really do any innovation like that, right? You basically do innovation in the smallest possible way. You do micro innovations, right? And if they work and if they stick, then you scale it, then you put more money into it. Right? You find how much money you put into innovation. These are experiments, right? You put in what you need to put in, and based on your conviction and your understanding of what that means to you and your business. And if it scale that by putting more money into it, and if it really becomes great and game changer, then you bet the entire company on it at times. Mm-hmm. Right? It is not that you can define how much money goes into an innovation.
Yes, right.
How people react to that innovation, right? And this means that you need to be able to do lots of small experiments at a low cost and in a collaborative way, right? You cannot have all the brains with you, right? You have to take and collaborate with other brains in the industry who are as good as you, right? Sure. And you might be running a very large company and very successful company because there is 80% luck that has favored you, right? But there might be much more brighter and intelligent and amazing people out there who may not be that successful, but they have great knowledge and they have great ability to innovate. Mm-hmm. Why don't you take them together and openly innovate along with them, share the problems and take them together along with you, and also share your wealth in the process. So that is what I mean by open innovation.
And yes, and as you said, that the next, helping hand or to open innovation is then collaboration, because then you look out for companies, again, who have, as you suggested, the common value-added thoughts as yours, and you work towards a common goal, where all your sentiments and your values are aligning towards, profit or not, but at least the work is genuine and honest. So, Abhishek ji, if I have to ask you, in where do you see technology? As you know, today I was just speaking to this doctor friend, and she said it's going to be a very interesting discussion today with Mr. Rungta. I understand, because we are doctors, dermatologists, or we are, for us, technology, we don't see beyond the OT, but now accessing to our patients and so much of other works, we are able to actually use technology. So if I have to ask you, where do you see technology taking innovation, technology taking entrepreneurship, technology taking today's times ahead? Because as you very rightly said in the conversation, that even post the times that we are in now, it's going to be a total new world, a new era. Technology will be redefined. So according to you, what will be that redefined technology?
Again, it's very difficult to say what will be the redefined technology. If really someone knows everything about what's going to happen in the field of technology in years to come, then he can be the he can be the boss of the
right.
future. What I would say is that obviously technology will define the future, and every industry will be disrupted massively by that. And I think that there will be. Innovation is driven primarily by technology today because that is the biggest disruptor in the game, right? Anything that disrupts has also the power of creating, because disruption means you kill something or you destroy something and you create something instead of that. You create an alternative of that, right? So when we talk about disruption, we talk about traditional insurance companies losing out to new age digital insurance companies, which use technology to the fullest extent to create distribution and underwriting platforms, right? Which traditional insurance companies have a bloated IT system, where the whole business has become actually an IT business,
Yeah.
right? It becomes weak, and their manpower and their overheads and their infrastructure becomes big
Yeah.
in companies, right? In the newer companies, IT takes the center stage,
Yeah.
and that they start beating them because technology has the power to automate a lot of things. Technology has the power to create new experiences.
Right.
Technology also has the power to create new product propositions,
Mhm.
new value propositions altogether,
Right.
because it changes the way people use that particular offering. Right?
Mhm.
Fundamentally, because technology is everything new that's around us. Right?
Mhm.
Obviously, in years to come, maybe when robotics will start ruling the world, then every new innovation have to link to robotics somewhere,
True.
and neural networks will start ruling the world. Where people's brain would be mapped somewhere, right?
Right.
All the new innovation will start linking to that. So today, digital is the hot keyword because that is the area which has got highest adoption, fast rate of adoption at this point of time, and all the changes that's happening, they are trying to bring that change and disruption using digital as a technology.
Right.
Nothing but it's just a connected world, right? It's anything which is connected to internet is digital, right? They have given a lot of beautiful names to it over a period of time. So every large consulting firm brings a very interesting name. Someone calls it smack, someone calls it cloud, someone calls it digital, right? They bring new names to it. I have been doing the same thing for 22 years, and I feel that this is digital for last 22 years for me.
That is so rightly said. But in the limited words that you've sent a very extensive and a very precise message out there, Abhishek ji. And I'm sure viewers, they're very limited entrepreneurs like Mr. Roongta who actually take the risk of putting the values ahead in their system of working, in choosing the customers, in creating that transparency in their work module, within the system to generate maximum productivity and maximum belief and trust amongst the employers. And because we know that whenever we talk about technology or a breakthrough in technology, we never hear it coming from a politician, or we never hear it, coming it from a media person or a corporate CEO. We always hear it coming from an entrepreneur just like Mr. Abhishek Roongta, because he is a kind of person, just like that, the title of that book, which says, just that something that got you from there to here will not get you from here to there. So you do need to, keep constantly understand that change is something which is very relative and something which you will need to face at every hour. And it is a strong leadership like Mr. Roongta at IndusNet, which is able to take that flag ahead. And I'm sure the viewers today have really got a very different take about innovation and, especially about running a business, because Abhishek ji, there are very few people like you, I should say, who take that risk of putting their values ahead of, being, as you said, what you were 22 years back, it's still the digital for you, and still you've made a mark. You are the marked mark, a man in this business. So I'm totally enthralled to have been in conversation with you today. And yes, viewers, if you want to know more about Abhishek ji and IndusNet, you can always Google that up. You'll have tons of remarkable stories to actually read, about Abhishek ji and IndusNet. So thank you so much, Abhishek ji, for being in conversation with me today. And as I say that. You are like my lucky mascot in my life, and how I started my social entrepreneurial journey and the corporate, into understanding how the corporate mindset works and how to go about building my confidence. And I owe that to you again. And yes, and I'm sure with the insight that you've given today about innovation, about the foresight, about the kind of team which needs to be built in for the times that we are living now, are going to be in for a very long time, is going to be very consumed by the listeners. So thank you so very much, Abhishek ji.
Thank you so much, Vijayanti, for having me on the show. Thank you.
Thank you, Abhishek ji, and good night to you. Bye bye, viewers.